hydrogen is unstoppable anyway. It's without an alternative, to reduce emissions for steel, certain mobility. It connects electrons and molecules. It's for long-term storage. So it's very clear that hydrogen is without an alternative. It's clearly unstoppable.
Welcome, Cornelius Mattes, to the podcast, The Hydrogen Leader. I am very happy to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me, Björn. It's a great pleasure.
So, as you know, with this format, we try to inspire hydrogen professionals to become successful leaders just like you, and to learn how you became so successful and about your insight in this emerging industry. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to the discussion. Before we do that, dear Cornelius, I want to ask a very basic question. I know that you are a very active professional in the Middle East, but if I were to ask you, who is Cornelius Mattes, what would you answer?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I'm maybe a bit of a crazy, unconventional person. I've done many things when I was small, climbed a lot of mountains, difficult mountains, survived. And I'm a person with values. So for me, I never compromise on anything. And I love to interact with people, to help people, and obviously to work on our mission or emissions.
And you are, so this is more or less the person, and you are also a very important role. You're the CEO of DIA Energy, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. DRI Desert Energy, as we've been founded in 2009 as the Desert Tech Industrial Initiative, still around after 16 years. I've been appointed CEO almost 5 years ago when we started the Desert Tech 3.0 mission, you can say. And we had quite an interesting revival. Nobody would have thought that is possible. So we always like to make the impossible possible as well.
Yeah, so I know you reinvented yourself, and this is also what we constantly doing at Highfinder as well. It's quite interesting to see. But more a little bit about the person before we come to what you are doing in business. So, what are you passionate about? I learned that you go on hills and do hiking, but is there anything that you would say you are driven, professional, and I'm really passionate about the following?
Well, I'm passionate about nature, mountains, special experiences, big challenges. When I was at university, I cycled across Tibet, for example, and in my life, I climbed many mountains, and
Oh, really?
you raise the level every time, traveling to remote places. So let's say the difficult things, the challenges, and where people say this is not possible, to make this possible.
So making basically the impossible possible is what you are passionate about.
Exactly.
I When I met you the first time, I also had the feeling that in your appearance and how you speak, you are very focused. And I learned that you also have been educated in the German military as a sniper. Is that correct? So, is this also why you are so focused, so laser focused in what you are doing? How was the impact of this sniper education?
Yeah, it's a good question, Björn. Well, I had the honor to serve in the mountain division, Gebirgsjäger of the German
Yeah.
Army, and specifically to apply for the elite squad, the mountain guides squad, which is basically serving the whole battalion on the most difficult things, and among them, sleeping 2 weeks in an igloo in winter. Sniper training has been, I think, a very good school as well, because it's not only about shooting on long distances up to 350 meters or with infrared during night, but it's about, let's say, enduring stress and keeping calm in extreme situations. And I think during the army, and particularly in such roles, you learn to keep calm in difficult situations, and that's what I learned as a mountain climber as well. So nothing can really provoke me or bring me in difficulties, and I think this is a characteristic which has been, in fact, very valuable throughout my personal and professional life.
Like a Marine SEAL in business, right? So because most famous are, I think, the U.S. military for this, but the German army also has these special forces, right? But
Exactly.
I could imagine that this has a big impact on your personal lives. I have also been with the military, and I think I have still learned many things, including leadership. And I wanted to ask you, because you are, I think, in the Middle East already a very famous person in the energy sector with a lot of impact. So leading other businesses, but I guess you also have a mantra on your leadership approach. So how are you leading people, and what do you expect from yourself?
Yeah, well, I did first, let's say, jobs during university, also, serving in student groups, and obviously step by step leading small teams. Then throughout my careers in Deutsche Bank, I had quite a fast track career. I rose to a director after just 5.5 years and became board member of the biggest Deutsche Bank organization outside Germany. By far the youngest. All the other board members were 20 years younger. But I think what I saw, you need to lead by example. You need to do things. You need to get your hands dirty, and you need to be honest as well. So I would characterize I'm probably more the anti-conservative person. I like to give people trust and to empower people. I think this is very important. To trust people, to give them the chance to delegate, and then usually, people make mistakes. I also make mistakes. We learn from our mistakes, and then we improve. And to make people feel that this is their baby. That it is also a big,
This ownership thing, yeah.
exactly, the ownership thing. Yeah.
Yeah, this is good, and this is how you get people be a driven professional on their own, right? If you are leading by example, I could imagine that the people follow you simply because you inspire them. So this is great. So now coming to your role in DIA Energy, and before we touch on the business part, I had the pleasure also to meet one of your compagnons, I would say, Paul von Son. And I think he was more or less, he's, I think, a very special person and businessman as well. Uh, a person who is driven to make a big impact in the world. And he found you probably. How did you connect with Paul? And because you moved from Deutsche Bank now in the energy sector, which is also a special move, I guess.
Yeah, this is always how life goes. It's a funny connection. So that is actually the first elected chairman of DRI when DRI was founded. Thomas Rüschen, he used to be CEO of Deutsche Bank in Italy, then globally head of project finance. And so he knew I had this passion for renewables, energy transformation. And when he was elected chairman, I was an expert in Italy. He knew that I was starting to plan my next move, and he approached me and said, well, couldn't this be something for you? Would you like me to introduce you to Paul? And that's what he did. And then, well, with Paul, we immediately clicked, and
Yeah.
I had, this opportunity to completely reset after almost 10 years in Deutsche Bank, to start with a startup and completely learn many new things from the scratch. And that was really an amazing challenge, which I really appreciated. And of course, Paul has been my mentor over the years. I learned so many things from him. And so that's a very important person for sure in my life.
And I think what is quite special about your so-called startup, it was basically one of the biggest initiatives by the time Germany was pursuing, together with Paul, in the solar industry, right?
Exactly. So North Africa,
Mhm.
to be precise, and the Middle East. And in fact, Desertec was all over in 2009. So That was all the superlatives, 400 billion euros, up to 15% of Europe's electricity demand as clean energy from the desert. And some call it the Apollo mission. So I think on the one hand, this contributed to make our plan to develop large-scale solar and wind in the deserts for the first time made popular. On the other hand, this was kind of a liability because a lot of unrealistic expectations, particularly on timelines, were created.
Please do me a favor and subscribe to our channel. If you like the content, it helps a lot to grow the channel. Thank you very much. Yeah, so just to, because I think we also have many new listeners who are just starting their career, and I know basically the hype about this project because I'm also a little bit older. But just can you describe what was the purpose back in 2009? What technology did you use? And I understand you wanted to build a big cable to Europe and deliver clean energy to Europe and other. So please outline the scope of it because it was such a mind-blowing project.
Yeah, with pleasure. So DRI as Desert Tech Industrial Initiative was mainly launched by German industry. Then the consortium expanded. That was my task as well. From the 13 founders to almost 50 companies from different countries. I think it was like something like 16, 17 countries. We brought on board Italy, Spain, France, the Middle East, North Africa region, so on and forth. So the idea has been, well, to set up the conditions, regulatory-wise, economically, work with governments for developing large-scale solar, but also wind, CSP, PE, in different countries in North Africa, and create different subsea cables, HVDC, high voltage direct current cables, which have a very low electricity loss over long distances. To be precise, only 1% on 1,000 kilometers. And effectively connecting markets. And we did a master plan. The first phase was presented in 2012, where we looked at an entire new energy system, Europe, Middle East, North Africa, almost 100% on renewables. So in this sense, we were much ahead of our time before all these 100% renewable studies were set up.
Yeah, and I think that one of the big lessons learned for me over the last years is that solar really took off once the prices came down, and probably you were 10 years ahead with technology and too ambitious to get this really going. So what were the key learnings that you got from this project? Because I think it did not materialize, right? So you needed to stop it, and then you needed to reinvent yourself, correct?
Well, Björn, that's interesting. I wouldn't say it was one project, and I wouldn't say it was stopped. I think there were certain expectations that were created by the press and by German industry, which were, to be frank, really unrealistic. And we had specifically a group of companies that wanted to use our vehicle just to get huge funding for CSP, for the parabolic trough or solar tower plans, which also we absolutely didn't want to, because we saw our mission in when solar and wind was expensive and exotic, and there wasn't anything operational at all to, first of all, create awareness, to open the doors with governments, to create bankability, create the regulatory conditions, create markets, create infrastructure. And in this sense, I would say we definitely succeeded, even though you correctly said it took significantly longer. The turning point was probably end 2014 in Dubai, when there was for the first time a price below 10 cents per kilowatt hour. That was the DEWA, the Dubai Solar Park phase 2, the famous 5.84 cents, when everybody said this is not possible because the perception was solar is at least 10%, 10 cents per kilowatt hour. And then all of a sudden, things went way fast. Then in just another year, we went to 3 cents. Another 2 years, we went to 1 cent. So there has been a literal, a collapse of the price per kilowatt hour for solar from 10 cents to 1 in less than 10 years. And also the price for wind went down. And the region here, in particular the United Arab Emirates, but also Saudi, scored one world record after another. So this is the reason
Yes.
with the lowest price in the world for solar and wind.
Yes, this is quite fascinating, and what I, in a broader scale, find fascinating, because nowadays, and now we switch a little bit to hydrogen, because basically this is the hydrogen leader. We can learn a lot from it, because currently people are discussing a production price for hydrogen of 10 euro or dollars per kilogram. But everybody says in order to make it really economically viable, it must go below 2 kilograms, below 2 euros per kilogram. And seeing that when the solar industry started, there was more or less the same discussion, I find this quite astonishing that we are now at this point. Would you agree with this assessment?
Definitely. If we look back now, the 2010s, or the fact that we predicted certain prices in 2012 in our major study, Desert Power 2050, for 2050, which were achieved in 2020. In fact, prices in 2020 were much lower than our optimistic estimates for 2050. I think this should guide us what is possible. And I'm 100% sure that in a few years from now, we look back the same. And obviously, apart from bringing down the production price, which is 2/3 of electricity approximately, and 1/3 electrolyzer and capex, we need to talk about things like introducing a price for CO2, because it is not that green is too expensive. Actually, gray or other forms, fossil forms of hydrogen, are simply too cheap and artificially cheap.
Okay, so what you're saying is, on the one hand side, there needs to be a journey that we go to reduce the cost per kilogram on the hydrogen sector, technology-wise. But in a broader sense, you say one of the problems the world is facing, because in going green, is that there is still subsidies um, on the fossil fuel part, which is preventing faster change. Is that correct?
That's correct, Björn. So the beauty about the extremely low prices, the lowest price for solar and wind, is that this has been achieved without any subsidies. It's just
Right.
competitive bidding. The 1 cent solar, the 1.5, 2 cent wind. So this is with zero subsidies. The problem is, on the one hand, there's no level playing field because there's still huge subsidies for fossil. And
Right.
even more importantly, contrary to Europe, where we have a price for CO2, a price for pollution, for emissions, here in the region and in many countries of the world, we don't. So if we have a reasonable price, and all of a sudden the price for gray, for black hydrogen would be far higher, and green would be immediately competitive. If you look at studies on what the social and the environmental cost of CO2 is, we are speaking about prices of more than $1,000 per ton. ETS price is plus minus 100, will probably go to 50 over the next few years. This is even far below. So the problem is there's not even a symbolic price here in the region. And this is apart from the leadership the United Arab Emirates showed, being the first to phase out subsidies, the first to introduce a net zero target. Other countries followed, but unfortunately, they didn't introduce a price for CO2, and this is a big missed opportunity as of now.
Right. There are two things that come into my mind. On the one hand side, I think there are these COP meetings, which are taking place, I think, on a yearly basis, with lots of buzz, lots of important people, and then a very small statement. I would think that they tackle these things that you are now talking about at these meetings. Is this true?
Yeah, well, I always personally try to avoid COP. Of course,
Okay.
is a platform like COP is important. It's an important discussion platform. But for me, being a very pragmatic person and let's say execution-oriented person, these kind of negotiations where you always meet at the lowest common denominator is quite frustrating. So I actually attended COP for the first time in Egypt, COP27, where
Right.
also launched a major initiative with Hydrogen Europe and the German National Hydrogen Council on an Eastern Mediterranean hydrogen pipeline. So that was a specific and concrete and impactful initiative, which is also pursuing step by step. COP28 in Dubai, obviously, that was home. I just walk to the metro station and go there.
Yeah.
15 minutes by metro from where I live in Dubai. And it's been a wonderful meeting place, and there is obviously the UAE consensus, but at the same time, obviously, much more could have been achieved. And Baku was relatively disappointing. There were a few advancements on Article 6, for example, but I'm not planning to attend COP30 in Brazil. So this is a thing where, unfortunately, always the same countries, they block they block important developments. So this is highly frustrating.
Okay, so bottom line, you are getting interested in COP if they are bold enough to put a price on zero emission on CO2. If they would do that, that would be basically the route forward, right?
Yeah, I think these are one of the things. It doesn't need to be the same price, but the fact that emissions, the fact that pollution needs to be taxed in every country in the world, I think this should be, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I always compare this to tax oases. You always have, everybody should have a reasonable tax. There can be a competition on tax, but there shouldn't be tax oases where there's zero tax. It's
Yeah.
simply not fair. And the same is here. So everybody should have a price for emissions, a price for pollutions. It can vary from country to country. The market, step by step, will take over, will determine. But it's absolutely unacceptable that there's still many countries today where you can pollute, you can, throw whatever emissions in the air without paying a penny for that. It's a scandal.
Exactly. Yeah, it's great. And there is something that comes more from a professional point of view. I think there is a whole industry depending on these subsidies also, because I think one year ago I really got into this subject, and you find that these big four advisory firms every year put out a white paper where they give their clients advice where they can get most of the subsidies for fossil fuel, for oil and gas. And I found this disgraceful these days, because these guys are paid so much, and they basically make a big business out of it, to help big companies make more money by polluting the earth. And I don't get this, because this is really frustrating. And as long as the politicians are not saying no to that, we can make a lot of PowerPoint, and we will not make the impact that we always need to do, right? So sorry for that, but I needed to comment on. No, okay. Now we talked about solar, which is very impressive, and also the technology advancement. But I think you also support with your organization, and you restructured DII now to Dubai and reinvented yourself, and you are proud about this. But you also facilitate green hydrogen projects, and there are very famous ones. I just today saw a LinkedIn post about the NEOM Green Hydrogen project, which is, I think, probably the biggest one in the world. So can you tell us, what are you doing in terms of hydrogen?
Absolutely. So like 16 years ago, solar and wind was exotic, was expensive. When we started hydrogen in 2017, we had this as, let's say, the major topic for our annual event in Dubai, thanks to Professor Art van Wijk.
Okay, yeah, Netherlands. He designed the energy system there, right? And made a boilerplate. Yes, I know. Sorry.
He's a long-term advisory board member in organization, and yeah, he saw hydrogen much earlier coming as an important topic. So he put this on top of the agenda at our annual conference in Dubai. And I remember following that, discussions were started because people were completely stunned on what he said.
What did he say?
Well, he said like this and this will happen, green hydrogen, and in 2017, you can imagine, beyond hydrogen wasn't a topic at all. It was like probably solar, wind 20 years ago when people said this would become a major source of power, and it is today. With
Yeah.
2 terawatts of solar installed, and
Yeah.
he made bold predictions. You can say different predictions that hydrogen will be bigger than oil and gas combined in a few decades from now, for example. And then, exactly for his bold statements, the CEO of Aqua Power at the time, Pierre Manhattan, Peter Therium, he was almost leaving already, but he was still in RWE and CEO of Energy. And, together also with ThyssenKrupp, our long-term partner, discussion started on, what the implications of such statements could be if they are really true. And that's exactly when, discussions about a project of a magnitude. It wasn't, of course, called Neom Green Hydrogen at the time, but that was also the same year then Neom started. Then the year later, Peter Therium, less than a year later, went to Neom, to lead energy and water and food. And, then obviously these discussions continued, and eventually in July 2020, Neom Green Hydrogen was announced, and this stunned the world. It is, as you said, by far the largest green hydrogen project under construction anywhere on the planet.
Yes.
So the sheer scale, also the economics, they really stunned the world. And I think most importantly, the consortium not only had this bold vision to announce such a project, but to bring it to financial close. And
Yeah.
bring project to financial close, where which is over more than $8 billion, more than $6 billion debt on a non-recourse project finance basis. These numbers, they're just staggering.
Right.
Made it, and it is 80% through construction now. So this
Yes.
whole thing happened in a relatively short time frame, and we are extremely proud that these discussions, they started out of our group.
Yeah, no, this is fascinating. And nowadays, I think this speed is oftentimes called as China speed, but it seems that there is also MENA speed. So let's stay a little bit on that. So where is that project actually located? Who are the shareholders or the funding partners? And how much green hydrogen will be produced with which technology?
Yeah, so the project is located in Neom, which you can say is a country in a country. It's approximately the size of Belgium. It's in the northwest of Saudi Arabia. It's just across, the Gulf of Aqaba. It's just 10 kilometers from Sharm el-Sheikh, basically. So
Okay.
to give you an approximate orientation, so just across Sinai. And Neom is a place where a new city, you can say a country in a country, is built from the scratch, based on 100% renewable energy, with some of the largest pump storage in the world in development, where a ski resort is being built. There will be the
Yes.
Games in 29, Trojena, because the mountains, they rise up to almost 3,000 meters. Also Sinai, we climbed
Yeah.
Mount Sinai, Paul and myself, during COP27, is almost 3,000 meters. This is quite impressive mountains. And
Yeah.
so there's different initiatives, different things being built, and one of them is NEOM Green Hydrogen. The project partners, the equity investors are 1/3 NEOM, 1/3 Aqua Power, 1/3 Air Products. And
Right.
Air Products plays two additional roles. So Air Products has the overall EPC wrapper, so is delivering the entire project turnkey. And as a third role, Air Products is the off-taker of all the hydrogen.
Okay.
So they basically contributed to make the project bankable. So they underwrote the entire future production of the project, which will have COD in Q1 27. So in just a good 1.5 years from now. And the amounts are approximately 1.6 gigawatt of wind, around 2 gigawatt of solar PV, and the production of green hydrogen per year will be a bit more than 200,000 tons and 1.2 million tons of ammonia. And also, by the way, there will be the world's largest ammonia tank, which is almost ready. The jetty to export ammonia will be ready. And as there's obviously no market really existing for ammonia, it is quite a courageous bet by Air Products. And I would argue that it can be a very profitable bet because, less than 2 years from now, particularly in the first few years, there will be a shortage of green ammonia. And the price is very competitive. They produce it at, so it can still turn out to be a very profitable bet, even though in the meantime, obviously, Air Products as a listed company has become a bit under pressure. But my personal opinion is it will be a very smart and profitable bet long term.
Yeah, so this is fascinating. So on the one hand side, Air Products is building the project, but the result, basically green hydrogen, which is then transformed into green ammonia, they buy from themselves through this project vehicle, probably. Yeah. So and this is basically going where? Is it then consumed in the area, or is there plans to export this green ammonia then?
It is, of course, mainly designed for export. Like with all
Mhm.
projects, you have an SPV for the project company itself. Then you have EPC wrapper, where obviously you need to deliver certain guarantees and financial requisites, so on and so forth. And then obviously a separate entity is guaranteeing the offtake, and between these are obviously Chinese walls. So that is all according to good market standards. The purpose is mainly for export. So this is why they have already built the ammonia export terminal
Yes.
for the existing infrastructure. Globally, approximately 10% of ammonia production, almost nothing in hydrogen, because hydrogen is produced and consumed on site. Ammonia has a tradable market where you have a bit more than 100 ammonia ships and almost 200 ammonia import-export terminals globally. So the idea is exactly to build on this existing infrastructure and to export mainly to Europe, where obviously there will be a sizable demand for green molecules in just a few years from now.
Okay, this is great because what is so different to Europe, we have all these little demonstrator projects with the ambition to show that it's technology-wise working, but where the European projects are really having troubles is this bankability and it seems that you have to go big in order to start, right? And that is probably the main lesson from this project, that if you don't be big or be bold, you will not kick this off, but it might have a big impact for kicking off the green ammonia market globally, I understand.
Absolutely. Well, smaller projects, of course, in a relatively early stage market play a certain role as well to get operations under control, to test technologies, and to be frank, there's quite a few challenges as well. But these bold projects, obviously, they're a huge sign of confidence. And within such a bold framework, we are speaking about 2,200 megawatt of electrolyzer capacity. Obviously, I speak regularly. We just had our partner meeting a few weeks back in Abu Dhabi. The CEO of Neom Green Hydrogen, I just met him again in Rotterdam, and we always have inspiring discussions. And I think the message is that obviously every day new challenges, new problems come up, but they're always being resolved. And this is the test case, the laboratory, and a very bold magnitude. And so there's a solution. And if you look at what projects are in the pipeline, with the MENA Hydrogen Alliance we created in 2019 to advance hydrogen economies here in the region and create this link to Europe. We have the hydrogen project tracker, and we speak about 121 announced projects here.
121 in the MENA region only.
That's correct.
Wow. So you have this big one flagship project, but you have more than 100 projects aside to that.
Absolutely. So obviously very important to understand that the only one really under construction is Neom Green Hydrogen now, but we have in Dubai, we have a pilot operating, it's 1.225 megawatt, Siemens Energy, which was already inaugurated 5 years ago. We have the first green ammonia plant, which has been operating since COP27 in Ain Sokhna in Egypt with our partner Turkey Globe. And then there's different stages of projects, closer or further from FID, where the leaders, I would say, are Oman with round 1, round 2, 8 projects overall, all of a similar size of Neom Green Hydrogen.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are bold projects. Oman has huge, let's say, target, and hydrogen, in fact, is among the key pillars of Oman's Vision 2040. So Oman will be a very important player in this field. There's other projects in Saudi, like the Aqua Power one with Sefen, but offtake. A preliminary agreement has been signed just in February, and Morocco is advancing fast. We're bringing more projects closer to FID, and also Egypt and even Tunisia, with our partner Verbund, for example, and the South Corridor project. So there is huge things in the pipeline. If we take the renewable capacity for these projects, we're speaking about around 140 gigawatts. So it is, of course, now the big challenge to bring as many of these projects to FID, financial close, and consequently construction in the next few years.
And because in Europe we talk a lot about this FID problem, that people plan, but never make it to the financing stage. What is different in your region? Do you have these very wealthy sheikhs in the back and say, no, we do this because we want to change the country? Or how is it actually working? Is it just a normal finance gain, or is there any special thing why these projects can take off in MENA?
Well, that's a good question. Björn, I would say it's a bit different country to country. So Saudi, obviously, and the GCC countries, the 6 GCC countries have a bit different dynamics because they're very rich. They have a very high sovereign rating and consequently manage to attract debt more easily and at a much lower cost. Egypt, being sub-investment grade, is a complete different ball game. Tunisia, Oman is just slightly below investment grade as well. So that's a bit of a different game. In countries like Egypt, Jordan, Tunisia, Morocco, development banks like KfW, like IFC, EBRD play a leading role. And they typically provide the debt for these kind of projects. The equity is provided by the international developers. The undisputed leader here in the region is Aqua Power, our mission partner with whom we've been working very closely for the past 15 years now. And then I would say number 2 is EDF, the French. They're very strong here. They have a huge portfolio of wind, solar, and hydrogen projects, even looking at pump storage. So, a very important player. And then many other private sector players. Then you have newer companies like Amea Power that are even stunning the established players. They just commissioned 500 megawatt wind and solar in Egypt in record time. And they have major green hydrogen projects. You have some of the other international players or even financial investors like Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, Actis, these kind of companies. And they typically develop the projects, they provide the equity. Sheikhs or sovereign wealth funds from the Gulf, as of now, they play a minor role.
Okay, this is interesting.
Mazda, because Mazda is obviously 100% under different governmental companies in Abu Dhabi. And Aqua Power more recently has attracted a controlling stake by PIF, the Saudi sovereign wealth fund.
Yeah.
But Aqua Power's origins is clearly as a 100% private sector player.
Yeah, I think Aqua Power is a brand name that I have learned is very impactful and deserve probably an episode of this Hydrogen Leader as well. We will see whether we can make this happen. Okay, so what do I get out of this? I have the feeling that your region will be the energy powerhouse for hydrogen, and it's not only projects, it will happen, right? So this is what seems to drive the MENA region to establish an energy supply system beyond oil. Would you think that is true?
Absolutely. If you look at the development of the UAE over the past 20 years, the UAE is extremely advanced in diversifying the economy. Dubai, by the way, I was never had oil, and Dubai is a place where the world comes to. It attracts most millionaires over the past few years, but it's not about money. Maybe 10 years ago, Dubai was a tax haven. People came to save tax, but this is absolutely not the case. People today come to Dubai because it's one of the centers of the world. It's a very livable city. I've been here with my family for 11 years. We are very happy. It attracts, technology, innovation. It attracts bright minds, startups. So this is, let's say, really one of the centers of the world for energy transformation. It's an Africa hub. So I think this is really what makes the region so exciting. And then Saudi is going through an amazing transformation. Oman is, North Africa is, and then the region is obviously a natural partner for Europe. Europe is 80% molecules, 20% electrons. So the question for Europe is, where will I get my 8% of molecules in the future? And where will I get them safely? Energy security and not rely on one producer like Russia in the past. So energy security, green power, safe, sustainable. And there's no better partner, there's no more natural partner than the Middle East, North Africa region for, the many countries that are here, diversification for the investments required, even to create jobs, to reduce some of the other big challenges in Europe. It's like a win-win. You reduce the pressure of migration because you invest in the countries, you create partnerships, and then on top, it's obviously the space available. Europe will never have the space for being self-sufficient. It's the lowest cost in the world. It's the fact that you have today pipeline infrastructure. You can repurpose, natural gas or hydrogen pipelines. So all of that, I think, make a very positive and really compelling case for the region to become the powerhouse for sustainable, for zero emission energy for Europe and even globally. So I have no doubt that this will happen.
This is fascinating. I can see all the excitement in you, and you are a great ambassador of the region, and I think very inspirational, because I think the hydrogen economy, but overall the energy transition needs developments and people and movements that people believe in. And I think it's so obvious that in your region a lot is happening and big is happening. And this is, I think, giving me a lot of comfort that the energy transition will take place and that we will not fall back from a hype. Yeah, because some people are already discussing in the hydrogen economy, are we in a new hype cycle which is now going down? No, when I hear you speaking, it will come.
Yeah, Björn, let me maybe give you another few facts and figures on energy transformation.
Please.
So 16 years ago when we started, there was nothing solar and wind. We had the first big wave since the mid-teens, and in 2020 we were at 15 gigawatt of solar and wind, almost a nothing. In just the last 5 years, we went from 15 to 30, and we this year made for the first time a market report where you have an overview on all solar, wind, battery, hydrogen projects in the Middle East, North Africa region, in which we also modeled different scenarios. And according to the development stages, announcements of projects, we believe that a conservative scenario would be 150 gigawatt of wind and solar by 2030, which is fivefold from today. But this is a conservative scenario. A more aggressive scenario would be almost 300 gigawatts. And this is not including green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is all separate, and hydrogen is unstoppable anyway. It's without an alternative, to reduce emissions for steel, certain mobility. It connects electrons and molecules. It's for long-term storage. So it's very clear that hydrogen is without an alternative. It's clearly unstoppable. And here in the region, there's no country which is not looking seriously at hydrogen of national strategies and other things. What we need now is a bit more courageous approach, for example, on quotas. If you look at Dubai, there is the world's largest airport. The UAE is a massive aviation hub. There's also Sharjah, there is Abu Dhabi Airport, there's the new DWC Airport. Take Saudi, they just bought hundreds of planes.
Yeah, I read this.
So all the world, this is here the center. Imagine if the region introduces a quota similar to the 1.2% in Europe for 2030, so that is probably the best way to step by step have minimum quotas blending for sustainable aviation fuel, just as an example. But there's other quotas for the takeoff of mobility, maybe for steel. CBAM, of course, will have an indirect effect as well. By the way, there's different green steel plants here under development, even in the advanced stage construction in Oman, for example. So I think we need a bit more courageous development on this. We need the CO2 price here, at least symbolic, to start the development in the right direction. And then obviously here in Europe is always linked, and Europe very clearly had bold targets but unrealistic execution. So on Europe, we just need a bit more pragmatic approach, and then step by step, things will come. And the amounts we are talking about only for sustainable aviation fuels are huge. Shipping, take the Suez Canal, this can become the green shipping station of the world for green methanol and green ammonia. And it will happen. The IMO, the new things now in the pipeline as well on reducing emissions for shipping. This is very powerful. It just needs to take the last more hurdles. But these things are and will happen.
And I think I understand there is where your organization comes in, because you perceive yourself as a think tank and you have a lot of things in your head as a CEO. So you have many members who are interested in these projects, right? And so they are the one driving this change, right?
Exactly. So maybe Björn, to explain a little bit how we work. So we had a very nice, you can call it revival, but Desertec 3.0, whereby at the 10th anniversary in the Adlon in Berlin in 2019.
Oh,
at the Adlon Worker Free. Yeah, that was a nice one actually. And that was when we started, let's say, to revive TI a little bit. We all worked for free and even put our own money as our own baby just to keep this alive. And then we presented hydrogen at the 10th anniversary in Aachen. It was a very impactful event, and there was so much interest. And all of a sudden, we went from 20 partners to 120 in just 5 years. So
Yeah, that's impressive.
even we didn't think that was possible. By the way, we were very selective. So our aim has been to rebuild DI as obviously the longest term serving group here, multi-technology, completely independent from all sides as a think tank here, and with the MENA Hydrogen Alliance and then Zeta, to advance the agenda here, to do the studies for governments, some crazy stuff. Let me give you another example. In 2017, we did a study on an electricity subsea cable between you and India and with the GCC Interconnection Authority. And people said, well, this is completely crazy. That will never happen. 2 years ago at G20 in India, this was exactly picked up and became an integral part of the India MENA Europe infrastructure corridor. So, we're never afraid in, let's say, being bold in putting forward some crazy stuff. It will come. We just need to be patient, and that has always been a guiding principle. And in this sense, the partners coming on board, and we also distinguish our partner group from the typical industry or trade association, which is typically more heavy on the manufacturing side. So our partners are more the big investors, like a Hy24, Breakthrough Energy, Blackstone, the big utilities, developers, Aqua Power, EDF, Nareva, Amea Power, the ones basically that we say are the doers of projects, the ones that are making the projects happen. They are our partners. And in this sense, we work hand in hand to help them to overcome certain hurdles, to facilitate developments, to create a link between the region and Europe, for example, now to help on the biggest challenge, which is always the offtake, to make the projects bankable. And these are the things. And then again, to give you an example on future topics, we created a liquid hydrogen task force. Liquid hydrogen is still a bit of a black box, but spearheaded by major partners like Daimler Truck. We jointly developed this to create a bit more transparency on economics, on technical feasibility. And that's what we do. On the hydrogen side, we did infrastructure studies on job creation, which is also very important.
Yeah.
Localization. So it's very broad, and with our partners, we work very closely, with the aim to make this happen, always in a very execution-oriented manner.
Yeah, this is great because sometimes you have the feeling people produce these studies and it's not picked up and it's not triggering something. But with your track record, it seems that you have the right people reading the right materials and then acting upon it. Yeah, so this is great. There are two things that I would like to touch upon in the term of the energy system, because I recently spoke to Eric Schäfer. I think you know him also very well from Green Investors, and he's on the topic white hydrogen. And we spoke about wind, we spoke about solar, we spoke about green hydrogen. What is your view on this natural hydrogen? Is this another game changer that can bring the industry forward and help transition to a better energy system?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So since the Economist article and Breakthrough Energy with Bill Gates invested, our partner in white hydrogen last year, we observe a major pickup, and with our CTO team, we've already looked at this quite a significant manner. Also to mention, by the way, we are firmly convinced that we could almost abandon colors for hydrogen. All colors are good, even fossil for now. Obviously, they would need to pay a price for CO2. Blue, all colors are fine. For now, we need to focus in, first of all, creating a hydrogen economy and ecosystem. So in this sense, we should really leave this ideological discussion behind us. It's just about the CO2 or emission content better, because there's CO2, but there's also many other harmful emissions like methane leakage, which need to be accounted for. White hydrogen, in this sense, obviously, is completely natural. It can be extracted directly, similar to gas from the ground. It needs to prove, obviously, that from an industrial point of view, technical point of view, this is feasible. And obviously, the price, it needs to be clean. There's many question marks, but I find it quite fascinating to understand and to learn on this new topic of white hydrogen. And it is for sure of increasing interest. And I definitely think that this might play a key role as well.
Okay, yeah, so this is basically early days, but you seem to be on it already, and we will monitor the situation closely. You mentioned also, I think, in a side note, this CETA initiative that you are also part of. It's Zero Emission Trader Alliance, if I understand it correctly, and it also has a role in building a hydrogen economy. Can you please explain this?
Yeah, with pleasure. Björn, let me maybe give you a bit more background on this as well. And well, that's a visionary initiative spearheaded by our president, Paul van Zonnen. You know, Paul, 25 years ago, had the vision to found EFET, European Federation of Energy Traders, which is still globally the most influential organization. And at the time, that was just before European electricity and gas markets were liberalized. You know, the idea was to create a contractual standard, which EFET did, and it's still called today the EFET contract. And
Oh, okay.
exactly there, Paul had the idea to create a like-minded group of, you know, the organizations with a trading background to create ingredients for market creation. Because for as of today, there's no market for hydrogen. There's almost no market for ammonia. It's a small traded market, which is not really, you know, transparent. And idea is to create the conditions, to create also the first contractual standard, and then step by step come to a situation in which you have a tradable market for the physical products of all kind of low emission molecules. But more than that, if you look at green electricity, the fact that you can trade virtually via green certificates, which are typically guarantees of origin or IREX, the fact that you can trade virtually and source virtually, even, you know, companies like Lichtblick for the retail, for more than a decade, you were able to buy green electricity 100% statistically. This had a huge impact. The fact that the major buyers of electricity, like data centers, you know, the big consumers like Google, Facebook, and so on, they can source also via green certificates major amounts. We're speaking about terawatt hours of electricity, has been a huge enabler for green electricity, for renewable energy. And exactly that will be a similar kind of enabler. The fact that you not only we create together with that a marketplace for the physical product of a low emission molecule, but also the virtual trade. And this is basically what we intend to do with Data.
Okay, so in the long term, we will see more or less a stock price for green energy, be it green ammonia, green hydrogen, or other clean energy products. And you really try to now build it from the ground up, starting with a contractual standard people can rely on, then putting the people together who build the market, and then you try to scale it up.
Exactly. So let's say our approach is more to create the conditions to open the
Okay.
doors regulatory wise, not so
Okay.
much the physical marketplace, but in our partner group, we have companies like Bureau Veritas or TÜV Süd, you know, that also certify the entire chain. And this, of course, will realistically take through the next decade, the 30s, but step by step, a marketplace will be created, both physically and virtually. And I don't have any doubt that long term, you know, the global market for hydrogen and low emission molecules will be bigger than oil and gas combined today. Absolutely no answer about that.
Yeah, that's I also believe in this vision. because it's a much more tempting product, right? And if you can bring value at this big scale, energy is the biggest business you can do. And if we can pull this off, I think it will be really big, but it will take some time. Yeah. What fascinates me about all the initiatives that you together with Paul trigger are that those are things that will never materialize in 2 years. So you always have the vision that it will come in 10 or 20 years, and you're so confident. And if you continue working on it, it will come. And another thing that you are already thinking about is this Casper, which I think is somehow a digital currency which has additional benefits because you can also transport information, which would be important for this tradable market theta you were talking about. Can you explain what Casper is?
Yeah, exactly. So, well, the fact that you certify, but also more importantly, trace from source to sink, low emission molecules, electrons, that is obviously key to create the trust, which is really the prerequisite to create a functioning market. And in this sense, Casper is a new cryptocurrency, which is many times faster, many times more efficient than Bitcoin, and has obviously a much lower emission footprint. And interestingly, also there, actually, Paul, you will not believe it, our president was almost more 70 years old, was a visionary to invest early in Bitcoin and these kind of things, and saw this all coming. And now we believe that very clearly, Casper, as a new cryptocurrency. And this is why we look at creating KII as well as Casper Industrial Initiative will play a very important role here. And this is basically part of our so-called pyramid, where you have all the things, from technology, market creation, traceability, and this is all kind of interlinked. And in this sense, I'm actually really always excited to learn every time more about these kind of topics because we are already heavily involved in them.
Yeah, it's fascinating because you have this basically uh, desert industrial initiative, you have the green industrial initiative, you have the Zeta industrial initiative, and you now even go on the currency industrial initiative. So you're building the house ground up with a very solid basement from your prior work, and now you're building it up. But this sounds a little bit like a moonshot to me, while I still am confident that it will be coming. But I guess, what are the biggest challenges? Because you are basically working on the problems and solving it, but when do you think will we really have a tradable green hydrogen commodity based on a digital market with a digital currency?
Yeah, well, I think a tradable market will come in phases realistically throughout the 30s. So that's
Okay.
not a thing for the 20s, step by step. And well, obviously, on cryptocurrencies, this is an extremely dynamic field. Things can move extremely fast. Depends on regulatory things, but I think it's clearly as a matter of fact that cryptocurrencies is becoming an asset class, an established asset class, where you can diversify a small part of your overall assets too. And well, this market creation obviously will have regional dynamics as well. It won't be a global movement from the start. We obviously have global endeavors with Zeta, not regional endeavors. I think this is very important to be said. And but this depends on so many factors as well. And of course, we will have quite prolonged periods in which we have bilateral offtake agreements with a lot of intransparency still. But obviously, our aim is to push for a transparent, for functioning market as much as possible. And technology makes it possible. When you
Yeah.
can trace from source to sink, you certify, and all of these things, they can, I think, make us quite confident.
Yeah. This is fascinating for me as well, and I also believe that there will be positive change coming through technology, also in that sense. So this has already been very exciting, dear Cornelius. Now coming to a little bit to an outlook, yeah. You are a visionary guy, but let's put yourself in the year 2030, because this is something like 5 years from now. What do you want to have achieved by that time? To look back and say, okay, I did it, Cornelius. I'm proud about myself.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, first of all, we live in an era of probably the most nasty geopolitical development most recently, where I personally wish that this gets rather better than worse. Uh, so that is a wish. We cannot influence this much, but this is a very important side condition. Um, uh, I think there are a few interesting trends here. On US, obviously, it was probably a significant devaluation of the dollar, which is coming out of the bull market. It started in 2008 when the dollar was at 160. So I would comfortably say that a price target for the dollar is probably 140, 150 for the next 2 to 3 years, if not lower. So there is a few really macro things. We predicted a significant rise in interest rates. By the way, nobody believed us. I always said times will be over for zero interest rate, and it came with a bang. 300 basis points in just 1 year. So that's made a little bit about the overall conditions. I think for energy transformation, solar, wind, hydrogen, everything, batteries, there is such a powerful trend in which we already have tipping points. We have combination of market shares, of developments, of capacities, that we clearly accelerate this entry in an exponential growth phase, where we already being, let's say, entering this uncharted territory. So in this sense, I'm very confident that the development for really a quintupling of renewables here in the region is very realistic. It's in fact conservative, will happen. And this is obviously a thing where we will look back and hopefully we will have been again part of this development, like we were, in the phase here, a driving force since we started with Desertec. And then secondly, on infrastructure. So there must be more developments. South Corridor is just one example. ELMED, the subsea cable between Tunisia and Italy, will be built soon as we speak. Then other, infrastructure between the region and Europe, and these partnerships. So, we are connecting people. We are not more than a platform. And often our slogan has been also connecting people, connecting continents. That can make wonders. And in this sense, bringing together the right organizations, pushing at the very highest level of the top private sector players, politics, and so on and so forth, and having a very good channel to the German ministry, with Katharina Reiche being promoted now to new Minister of Economic Affairs and Energy. She's been a long-term advisory board member. We've been working very closely over the past few years. This is a wonderful news for Germany. With such people, we have excellent relationships and trust bases. We can, I think, make this happen. And looking back, to have created these partnerships, to have kickstarted, to have originated discussions that, for example, Neom Hydrogen, that led to such projects. if we can make it again, that would make me personally extremely proud. And of course, not to forget about, with our group of people, we also want to have fun. We want to create memorable moments because I always say, if you don't like your job, then change the job. So we want to also, with people that became almost friends, many of our partners, there's so many years of trust, of friendship, create unique moments. And we want to look back, these were the occasions where really a few things where we seriously changed the world, started to happen.
Okay, what shall I say, Cornelius? So this has created a special moment for me, and I also think that we will create a special moment for our listeners, because I think what I have learned from you, dear Cornelius, is that you started basically as a professional which is very disciplined and focused in Germany, and you rise through ranks, and now you're not so focused anymore on your career, but more connecting the right people. And by doing so, this is my impression, you become impactful on your own. And the more impactful people you connect with the right mindset, the bigger the impact we have, and the faster the energy transition will come. This is my short summary of what I get out of this call. And I am very honored that I have you here. It's giving me goosebumps. Thank you very much for taking the time and sharing your vision. I wish you all the best with all the initiatives and the passion that you have, and I hope that we can connect and see also these things materialize. So many thanks, dear Cornelius, for sharing all this, and I hope that, and I'm confident that this podcast will inspire many people to continue believing in the energy transition that we are all driven to achieve.
Yeah, thank you very much also for the wonderful summary, Björn. Really appreciate it. And if I can indeed inspire a few more people and Zeus, that would make me personally very happy. Thank you so much.
We will do our very best, dear Cornelius. Thank you very much for participating in this podcast, and I hope that you like this format and many people will subscribe and share this. Thank you very much.